All right, so this is Mark Edge, and I'm here at the Startup Societies Foundation Summit in Washington, D.C. I have grabbed the organizer, Joseph McKinney. For people that didn't make it, what are we doing here over the course of the next 2 days?
Okay, but first we should probably explain what a Startup Society is. A Startup Society is any form of experimental government located in a small geographic area. That includes things that your users are probably a fan of, such as private governments or special economic zones in the city-states, but it includes things like eco-villages and intentional communities and communes. The point being is that we need experimentation in governance, and unfortunately we cannot do that with large centralized states, so we need to do it on a small scale. Unfortunately, we can't simply argue and virtue signal about liberty and whatnot nowadays. We need to actually take action, and the best way to do it is on a small scale, very similar to the principle of blockchain technology, where you build the alternative rather than talk about it. The point of the summit is to create a consortium of partners that would help in rebuilding Puerto Rico with special economic zones. Special economic zones, which are areas within a host country that have experimentation policies, have been used in places like China in order to create enormous economic development. So what we want to do in Puerto Rico is that we want to institute or help Puerto Rican organizations institute special economic zones so they can create economic development on the island. In order to do that, we need a consortium. A startup society is not like a startup where you can open in your garage. It's something that you need a multiplicity of different people involved, people with different expertise, people with capital, people who people trust, and people with connections to the local host government. So people in this consortium would include policymakers, investors, blockchain entrepreneurs, infrastructure experts. Basically all people related to building new cities. The point of this conference is a call to action for this consortium to be formed, and as a result they will make a plan, and they will take steps, give responsibilities of who will execute different parts of the plan, and then do it.
So states, and Puerto Rico's its own, sort of sovereign government to some extent. I mean, it has some level
territory,
of some level of sovereignty. They've shown over time to be extraordinarily reticent to move in new directions and allow people to come in. It seems like catastrophes, which Puerto Rico has experienced, would probably be a good time. Is there any forward motion here, or is this the startup societies just saying this is what you should do? What, I mean, is there any Puerto Ricans that are interested?
Yeah. So first I want to clarify: startup societies generally aren't sovereign. Special economic zones aren't sovereign. They have autonomy within policies. City-states are sovereign. In terms of momentum, yeah, they are interested. I mean, look, the Puerto Rican government, they don't have a ton of options. They have an enormous amount of debt. They don't have valid infrastructure. Millions of Puerto Ricans are leaving all the time. There's a giant diaspora of Puerto Ricans because there's not opportunities.
As I understand it, there's more Puerto Ricans in the United States than there are in Puerto Rico.
By a large factor, by times two, in fact.
That shows the lack of success at the Puerto Rican state. I mean,
right.
Wonderful weather, right?
Right.
Like, it's a good place to start. You're well placed for trade, and it seems like in one case it's U.S. policy with Wilson Act? I don't know.
Jones Act.
Jones Act, sorry. The Jones Act, makes it difficult for them to trade. But other than that, it's their government's fault. And of course, the government's going to blame the United States, and of course, the United States is going to blame the government, and that's how this whole system.
I mean, they're both
works.
justified, yeah.
Right. There's justifications on both sides, but that doesn't get us anywhere.
Right.
Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Well, maybe sometimes they just need a divorce.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we're not talking about separation, but I do think one of the benefits of special economic zones and startup societies broadly is you don't have to do reforms on a large scale. You can simply take certain places that are unpopulated generally are the best. What they call green fields in special economic zone terms. Well, it's best because there's not existing populations that people will see as like they're supplanting existing populations.
Right.
So that avoids a lot of the political issues and ethical issues associated with startup societies.
That sort of happened in Honduras a few years ago
right.
with all these different startup cities, maybe, or sovereign cities. I can't remember what
they're called the ZEDEs.
The ZEDEs, right?
Which is
and the first one was there was some people that were, that the land that was being set aside, there were some people that claimed that land, even though they didn't live there, they hunted there or something.
So yeah, there's been multiple locations proposed for the ZED program, and some of them aren't uninhabited. However, people have heard about the habited ones because of, obviously, it was a point of contention and it made the news.
Yep.
But they're trying to move away from that and go towards more of a green field.
It would seem like, when you're talking about an inhabited place, that a payoff's in order. Here's your $10,000 for leaving us the hell alone. Here's your $10,000 for leaving us. I mean, it couldn't be too much for.
So that's explicitly part of our plan. The Startup Societies Foundation has created a plan called Prosperity Cities for Puerto Rico, and one of the recommendations is that if it is a zone, and the traditional special economic zone model is that the zone developer, they lease out land to smaller developers and they further lease it out to other people. A share of those land lease revenues would go to the Puerto Rican government or individual Puerto Ricans as a way to say, look, this is your place, and we want to make sure that we share in the value.
Okay. Why won't this work in the United States?
For a couple reasons. For one, I think the Commerce Clause makes it fairly difficult. There are foreign trade zones in the United States, so they do reduce tariffs. However, it's difficult because special economic zones work particularly well in areas that aren't governed well and are very poor. And as much as, libertarians like to say...
Aren't governed very well?
Aren't governed very well. And as much as libertarians often like to say that, American is this big despot and has terrible governance, and in relative terms to the rest of the world, and in absolute terms, it's governed well. Now, that's not to say that it's not precipitously declining.
Well,
but
if you go through your city and you look for the places that don't have property tax levied against them,
right,
you will see that there are very, very few, which tells me this is a pretty efficient organization in doing what it does, which is rapaciously extract money from us. So what it wants to do well, it does pretty well.
It can be done well. There's been a couple of special economic zone attempts, but the big problem is that special economic zones in the United States, they tend to get log rolled, a lot of special interest. But if it's in a place in the developing world where they need it the most, you see the most marginal returns. Like, think about it like this: if governance is a competitive enterprise where you have multiple jurisdictions competing for your citizenship or your residency, the places that have the most drastic change are going to be places where they're going to get the most gains. That's why special economic zones were so successful in places like China. Because under Maoist China, you didn't have any property rights, you didn't have any way to do business, you were being killed. But if you suddenly have a place where there is a regulatory environment that's conducive to free trade and free economic exchange, you're going to see huge returns. And that's why you saw cities like Shenzhen, which was a fishing village of 30,000 people, grow into a city of 18 million with the same gross domestic product as Ireland, Portugal, or Vietnam in 30 years.
30 years.
30 years.
It's stunning. So how far are we to this in Puerto Rico at this point?
So we're at the very beginning stages here right now. There's the Puertopians, obviously, that have been making some movement. But ultimately, this is the point of the consortium. We need to get everyone realizing that we need to take steps. So hopefully, at the end of this conference, people will form an organization, a consortium, that can take practical steps to get stuff done.
Where are the other places that the Startup Societies Foundation is targeting for these types of ideas?
So this is the first time we've ever done a targeted event where we started talking about a specific place. But we're a global phenomenon, so as soon as there's other places that have demonstrated interest or demonstrated a need, or there's locals, like there are in our consortium, half of our consortium partners are Puerto Ricans, we will certainly seek out those places and do something similar.
So, do you got a timeline for this, or is it still just start the event and see what happens?
It's a rough timeline. I would like to, in the next 4 months, conduct another conference, because after 2 weeks after this event, I want to have an initial proposal for the consortium. And then in 4 months, I would like to have another conference, a little more close-knit, with consortium partners who get together and finalize the plan. And then we would like to have a conference at the end of the year, or 6 months after the next conference, in which we actually delegate responsibilities of different consortium partners in order to enact the plan.
Excellent. So if people think this is a good idea, and I think it's a good idea, of course, it's been a good idea that's been going around for a while, and I don't know what it takes to kind of jump it to the next level, but where do they go, and how do they find out more?
So you find more at startupsocieties.com. Simple as that.
Startupsocieties.com.
And if anyone has skills related to building cities, governance, investment, entrepreneurship, you're all needed. Basically, everyone related to city building. And promoting this movement on your social medias and other networks, that would be absolutely fantastic. Because we need startup societies that require both a grassroots network, and they need to talk to local governments. So if we address them at both angles, we should be in a good place.
If we can get this idea rolling, there's a lot of money to be made, a lot of people to be helped, and frankly, it'll change the face of the globe as it is today. We're working with what essentially is a 12,000-year-old model of governance, but with some tweaks and some changes, there's still this top-down thing that we've got going, and really, there hasn't been an innovation in government in thousands of years. That's what we need.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. StartupSocieties.com.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeene.com. FreeKeene.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. FreeKeene.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. FreeKeene.com.